She stood there smiling while they laughed at her. What none of them knew, the quiet woman they just humiliated controlled more territory, more power, and more danger than anyone in that room could survive. And the most dangerous man in Asia was already watching. The chandelier above the Meridian Hotel ballroom dripped with crystal and arrogance. Ayana stood near the far wall in a simple black dress, holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. Around her, Seoul's most powerful elite moved in practiced circles. Businessmen, politicians, socialites draped in borrowed ambition. Her husband Zephyr had insisted she attend. "It's important for appearances," he'd said, fixing his cufflinks without looking at her. She should have read that sentence more carefully. 7 years of marriage had trained Ayana to be invisible. Not because she was weak, but because she'd chosen it. Since relocating from Atlanta to Seoul for Zephyr's pharmaceutical career, she'd packed away the woman her father raised and wore accommodation like a second skin. She attended dinners. She smiled correctly. She asked nothing. What she never told Zephyr, what she'd never told anyone in the city, was who she was before the quiet. Her father, Lee Ha, didn't build hospitals or tech companies. He built empires, the kind that never appeared in Forbes, but that every serious player on 3 continents whispered about with their doors closed. Ayana was his only child, his chosen successor. The woman who'd memorized exit strategies before she learned algebra. But tonight she was just Zephyr's wife. She noticed the shift in energy before she saw the cause. Heads turning, a low ripple of whispers cutting through jazz music, then laughter, sharp, performative, designed to carry. Is that her? His wife? Ayana turned slowly. A woman was pointing at her. Beautiful, polished, draped in red, laughing with her hand pressed theatrically to her chest, as if Ayana's presence was the funniest thing she'd encountered all evening. Zephyr stood beside her. His hand rested on the woman's waist. He didn't move it. Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt completely alone? Not because nobody saw you, but because the one person who should have didn't? Drop a yes in the comments if you've ever felt invisible in a relationship. The woman in red had a name. Soo-yeon, daughter of a cosmetics billionaire, 24 years old, and utterly convinced that beauty was a weapon nobody could survive. She was wrong about that. Soo-yeon leaned toward the woman beside her, voice pitched perfectly, loud enough to land, quiet enough to seem accidental. I don't understand why he even brought her. She looks like somebody's assistant. Laughter rippled through the small circle. Zephyr said nothing. He adjusted his champagne glass and looked somewhere above Ayana's head. The specific cowardice of a man who'd already made his decision, but hadn't found the words yet. Ayana felt it land. Every syllable. She felt the room's eyes flicker toward her. That horrible social moment where strangers pity you and enjoy the pity simultaneously. But her face didn't move. Years of training, her father's voice in her ear. Your face is intelligence, Ayana. Never spend it cheaply. Soo-yeon, mistaking stillness for weakness, pushed further. She walked directly toward Ayana, red dress whispering against marble floor, smile sharp as a letter opener. You must be Zephyr's wife. He talks about you, not often, but still. She tilted her head. You're very quiet. Is that a cultural thing? The circle held its breath. Ayana looked at Soo-yeon for a long, unhurried moment. The way a chess player looks at a pawn that doesn't yet know the board has already shifted. I enjoy the evening, Ayana said softly. She set her untouched champagne on a passing tray, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the exit. Calm, unhurried, unbothered. Nobody in that room noticed the single text she sent before her phone disappeared into her clutch. Nobody except the man watching silently from the upper balcony. Kang Min hadn't looked away from her once. Soo-yeon thought silence meant weakness. But sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Have you ever chosen silence over revenge? Tell us in the comments. And if you're new here, subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Kang Min didn't attend parties. He audited them. As chairman of the Kang Group, and quietly the architect of Seoul's most untouchable criminal infrastructure, he had learned long ago that the most useful intelligence wasn't found in boardrooms. It was found in ballrooms, in the unguarded moments between expensive drinks and cheaper ambitions. Tonight he'd come for Zephyr. The man owed 3 of Kang Min's silent partners a combined $40 million in pharmaceutical licensing fees he'd been creatively misrouting. It was a simple collection matter. Boring, almost. Then he'd seen her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, extraordinarily. He'd noticed her because of what she didn't do. When the woman in red humiliated her, every other person in that room had reacted, flinching, whispering, leaning in. Ayana had gone completely, unnaturally still. That kind of stillness wasn't weakness. Kang Min had seen it once before, in her father. He pulled out his phone. Run a name, Zephyr Holtzwife, maiden name. His associate's response came in 40 seconds. Kang Min read it twice. Then he laughed, a rare quiet sound that made the 2 bodyguards flanking him exchange nervous glances. Lee Ha's daughter. Here. Married to this man. While playing the role of invisible wife at a hotel party, while her husband's mistress performed cruelty for an audience. He descended the balcony stairs with the unhurried precision of someone who'd just realized the evening was far more interesting than anticipated. By the time he reached the main floor, Ayana was already outside. He followed. Not to intercept. Not yet. Simply because in 20 years of navigating dangerous people, he had never once seen Lee Ha's blood walk away from humiliation without a plan already in motion. He wanted to see what she'd built. Seoul's night air hit Ayana like cold clarity. She stood at the top of the hotel steps, the city sprawling below her in rivers of light, and allowed herself exactly 10 seconds of feeling it. The humiliation, the betrayal, the specific grief of watching someone choose someone else in public. 10 seconds. Then she exhaled and became herself again. Her phone rang. She answered on the first ring. I saw the text, the voice said. Calm, familiar. The voice of a man who had taught her that power whispered. Are you safe? I'm fine, Appa. You're not fine, Lee Ha said quietly. But you will be. Do you need me to come? No. She almost smiled. I need you to let me handle it. A pause. Your mother would say the same thing. She never let me fight her battles either. His voice carried something ancient in it. You have access to everything. You know that. I know. Ayana. Yes? Don't be merciful because you think it makes you noble. Be merciful only when they've earned it. She hung up as footsteps approached behind her. Unhurried, deliberate. Not Zephyr's frantic shuffle. Something measured. She turned. The man who stopped 3 feet away from her was tall, sharp-jawed, dressed in a charcoal suit that had never seen a department store. He looked at her with eyes that held the particular stillness of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. Except he looked, faintly surprised. You're Lee Ha's daughter, he said. Not a question. Ayana studied him for exactly 1 second. And you're Kang Min, she replied, which means you're either here to threaten my husband or you're losing money because of him. Which is it? His mouth curved. Both. Then we might need to talk. They walked. Not because it was romantic, because Ayana didn't do conversations inside buildings where walls belonged to other people. Kang Min matched her pace without comment. A man comfortable with silence. She noted that. How long have you known who I was? She asked. 40 minutes, he said. How long have you known about Zephyr and Suyon? 4 months. He glanced at her. And you stayed. I was gathering information, Ayana said simply. There's a difference between staying and positioning. Kang Min was quiet for a moment. Your father trained you well. My father trained me to survive men like my father, she said. What Zephyr did is significantly less sophisticated. They stopped at a bridge overlooking the Han River, Seoul's lights trembling on dark water below. He's been laundering money, Kang Min said. Through the pharmaceutical company, my partner's funds, 40 million. 43, Ayana corrected quietly. He turned to look at her fully. You knew. I found the accounts 8 weeks ago. I've been documenting everything. She met his gaze without flinching. I wasn't protecting him. I was building the case. There's a difference between ignorance and strategy. Something shifted in Kang Min's expression. Not softness exactly, more like recalibration. The way a man looks when he realizes the person across from him is playing a longer game than he anticipated. What do you want? He asked. Everything that's mine, she said, and I want Soo-yeon to understand exactly who she laughed at tonight. Those are two different operations. I'm aware, Ayana said. I'm proposing we run them simultaneously. The river moved silently beneath them. Somewhere behind them, Seoul's party continued, oblivious. Your father, Kang Min said slowly, once told me that Lee Ha's greatest weapon was patience. He paused. I'm beginning to understand what he meant. Ayana looked back at the water. Do we have a deal? A beat, then we have a deal. Ayana didn't explode. She strategized. Do you think patience or confrontation is the most powerful response to betrayal? Let us know below, and if this story is gripping you, subscribe right now and hit the bell so you catch every episode we drop. Over the next 2 weeks, they met in private. Not romantically, functionally. Kang Min's private offices occupied the top 3 floors of a building that appeared on paper to belong to an architectural firm. Ayana came in through the underground entrance dressed in plain clothes, carrying files that would have made Zephyr's lawyers weep. But something else was happening between the documents and the strategy. It started with coffee. Kang Min's assistant brought tea. Ayana asked for coffee, black, no sugar. The assistant hesitated, glancing at Kang Min, who nodded once. Small thing. But Ayana noticed he remembered after that. Coffee appeared before she arrived. You don't sleep, he said one evening, noting the faint shadows beneath her eyes. I sleep strategically, she replied without looking up from her laptop. That's not what sleep is for. She looked up then. He was watching her with an expression she hadn't expected from him. Something careful, almost concerned. Don't do that, she said quietly. Do what? Look at me like I need protecting. I'm not, Kang Min said. I'm looking at you like you're exhausted and too proud to admit it. Those are different things. She held his gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them, unspoken, unresolved. She returned to her laptop. But that night, for the first time in months, she slept properly. She didn't tell him that. He didn't ask. It was the 3rd meeting when he showed her a photograph. Old, slightly faded. Her father and a younger Kang Min standing in front of a building in Busan, both unsmiling, both carrying the weight of men who'd already seen too much. He mentored me, Kang Min said quietly. For 3 years, I owe him a debt I've never been able to repay. Ayana studied the photograph. Is that why you're helping me? It started that way, he said. The silence after that sentence was the loudest thing in the room. It was Zephyr who found out first. Not about the full extent of Ayana's operation, but enough. One of Kang Min's junior associates, bought cheaply by Soo-yeon's father, fed back fragments. Ayana's name, the meetings, the files. Zephyr arrived at the office building at midnight. He found them both there. Ayana at the table, Kang Min standing at the window. Innocent, in fact. Devastating in appearance. Zephyr's face collapsed into something ugly. So this is why you stayed. You weren't heartbroken. You were plotting with him. I was protecting myself, Ayana said steadily. By running to the most dangerous man in Seoul? His voice cracked. Not with grief, with wounded ego. Do you understand what you've done? You've made an enemy of Soo-yeon's family. Her father will destroy everything. Her father, Kang Min said from the window, his voice dangerously quiet, owes me favors he cannot afford to stop paying. Zephyr turned on Ayana. Is this who you really are? I never knew you at all. Something broke open in her chest. Not love, but grief for the years spent folding herself small for a man who'd never deserved the full version of her. No, she said, voice steady despite everything. You knew exactly who I chose to be for you. The tragedy is that you threw her away for someone who laughed at her. Don't talk to me about tragedy. Get out, Kang Min said. Not loudly, the kind of quiet that closes doors permanently. Zephyr left. Ayana stood very still. Then, without warning, the composure cracked, just slightly. Her hand trembled against the table's edge. She pressed it flat. Kang Min crossed the room and stood beside her. Not touching, just present. You don't have to be composed right now, he said quietly. She pressed her eyes shut. Yes, I do. Why? Because if I stop, she whispered, I might not start again. The operation concluded on a Thursday. Zephyr's financial misconduct was submitted to 3 regulatory bodies simultaneously. The evidence was airtight. Ayana had made sure of that. His pharmaceutical company folded within 72 hours. Su-Yan's father, faced with Kang Min's very specific reminder of outstanding debts, withdrew his social and financial support from Zephyr entirely. Su-Yan disappeared from Seoul's social scene almost immediately after. Ayana stood in her apartment, the one she'd moved into alone 3 weeks prior, and felt the strange, hollow silence of a victory that cost something real. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from Zephyr. She deleted them without listening. There was one unread message from Kang Min. She'd been staring at it for an hour. The matter is concluded. Everything owed to you has been returned. You don't need anything from me anymore. A pause in the message thread. Then a second text sent 4 minutes later. I find that I am not relieved by that fact, which is unusual for me. Ayana sat down slowly. She thought about the photograph, her father and a young Kang Min carrying the weight of their world without flinching. She thought about coffee that appeared before she arrived. About a man who stood beside her in her worst moment and asked nothing in return. She thought about her father's voice. Be merciful only when they've earned it. Perhaps that applied to trust also. She typed, come for coffee tomorrow. Bring nothing. Just come. She set the phone down, picked it up, read his reply. 3 words. What time, Ayana? She smiled. Real, unguarded, the smile of a woman who'd survived everything and was choosing, with full knowledge and full power, to open a door. Early, she typed back. I'll make it myself. He came at 7. No bodyguards, no briefcase. Just Kang Min at her door in a simple dark jacket, carrying nothing, as instructed. She handed him coffee, black, no sugar. He looked at it, then at her, with the particular expression of a man understanding a language he'd never been taught. You remembered, he said. I remember everything, Ayana replied. Oh, sit down. They sat at her kitchen table while Seoul woke up outside her window. Street vendors, school children, the ordinary world moving through its ordinary morning, entirely unaware of the extraordinary thing quietly assembling itself in this apartment. I called my father, Ayana said. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you were useful. She paused. He laughed for the first time in years. Kang Min looked into his coffee cup. And what would you call me now? Beyond useful? She studied him. This complicated, dangerous, unexpectedly careful man who had stood beside her in the dark and asked nothing. Honest, she said. I'd call you honest. That's rarer than useful. He looked up. Something in his expression, stripped of performance, stripped of the armor that powerful men wore as identity, was simply a man sitting across from a woman he didn't want to leave. "I've been in rooms with the most dangerous people on this continent," he said quietly. "Yeah, I have never been as unsettled as I am sitting in your kitchen." "Good," Ayanna said. "Unsettled means honest." Outside, Seoul continued its mourning. The chandelier ballroom where Soo-yeon had laughed, where a room full of people had watched a woman they'd underestimated, felt like another lifetime. The woman who'd stood invisible at that wall was gone. What remained was Dr. Lee Ha's daughter, Ayanna, fully herself, fierce, brilliant, unhurried. A woman who'd chosen to be small for love and, when that love proved unworthy, had chosen to become everything she'd always been. And across the table, watching her with eyes that had finally found something worth being unsettled by, Kang Min made the quietest decision of his dangerous life. He would earn the trust of this woman if it took him the rest of his years. He said nothing. She said nothing. But when she refilled his cup without asking, and he stayed without being told to, everything that needed to be said was already spoken. Yana didn't just survive betrayal, she transformed it into power and found something real on the other side. What was the moment in this story that hit you hardest? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power.